All right, so I guess we should start with the first question.
So what is this first question?
So first question was posted by exclamation marks.
Ask your questions. Nice, good question. All right.
So first question is, greetings. I would like to ask everyone's opinion about the families designated to inns. With the latest update of increase in food price, I noticed that my innkeepers aren't profiting much even when I put their rent at 1 silver per season. Rest of the question pretty much explains in bigger detail why is the inn not profitable. I think right now there's several problems with the economy, as many people are reporting and experiencing. The balance of making each family profitable is very difficult to reach because it's connected to several places. For example, the inn specifically, they need to be managing purchasing ingredients for the meals, but also scale it to the amount of visitors that they are getting. Also change the price of the beds and the meals that they are selling, and they're also purchasing beer and selling it to people. So there's already a lot of moving elements, and we didn't have the time yet to look at the economy balancing in a longer time to make sure that it all works properly. So the balance of the inn is not really as it should be. What is the correct solution though is hard to say. We're going to be looking into it in the next major update, which is planned to be released somewhere in the beginning of the next year, and there we were going to be focusing on the economy balancing a lot more than we have been so far. So I hope the inn will be addressed. There's been a lot of suggestions around these problems in the feedback channels on our Discord, so I've received a lot of feedback around it, and some solutions range from limiting how much families can purchase, how much they can sell, when they want to sell. I've seen a lot of the times people also suggested or noticed that people are selling stuff that they would need for themselves to sort of, people see that they're selling resources that they should be consuming for their own production, and this is usually happening when they have more than they need for themselves.
I mean, there was also we had issue with the purchasing of some of the things from the inn. I think there was like beer, and maybe also the meals weren't like the transaction of gold wasn't happening in the previous version, and that is also going to be fixed in the new update.
Yeah, I mean, people sort of requested that we should be like they should not be selling those resources when they have too many of them, and I think that's not really what we want to do, because sometimes you can get into a situation where you have multiple families that have the same profession, like foragers, and if you set one of the foragers to be focusing purely on wood and only some of the planks, they could be selling the wood to the other foragers, and those would be then turning it into planks. So then it gives you more flexibility to do all kinds of setups. And if we would be preventing them from selling things that they might need for themselves altogether, this wouldn't be possible. So we always want to have that in there to some capacity, and there is more of a question of balancing when they actually start selling them, as opposed to hoarding them for their own future production. And that might not always be balanced as it should be. So we're going to be definitely improving that in the following updates.
Yeah, we did something already when you as a player, you're granting resources to them, and now they will stick with the resources for a few days and not be selling them right off. Like if you give them a big portion of wood that you are thinking of, oh, they will use this for like building their structure, they will not just sell it off to the caravan or something. So that's one step in that direction.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think, is this all we can say to this question? Maybe we can...
Yeah, or else it will pop up more around the same subject.
All right, so the next question is from 8 Your Cookie. I'm interested in how the soldier mechanic will work. Could we adjust the level of difficulty of the game by adjusting the settings of how many troops the king will recruit from us? If not, are there any plans for setting difficulty of a playthrough? So the soldier mechanic will be how many troops? Yeah. So there's no. In general, this question is more about adjusting of difficulty. We currently don't have any plans to have that in the game. I can definitely see it work, and there are ways that could be scaled. For especially the king, how much the king is requesting, how many troops, how good the equipment needs to be. We can even tune values around production, so how many resources you get from turning wood into planks. So there's definitely things that can create new challenges and have it sort of as a scalable difficulty that we could be doing, but we wouldn't probably have time to do it because it's very difficult to balance even the base game, and when we introduce more difficulties we would pretty much multiply the work on balancing for all of the difficulty settings. So
talked a bit about having different like biomes, like in some sense that you could choose your map, where it's also in the middle of if we should do this or not. I think we have time for it, but we should be able to choose like if you want to be in a very much colder climate where you would have more like difficulty with keeping warm and stuff. But this is more like customizing the map generation, which is on the, I guess, possible included things that we may do.
Yeah, I think if we would be looking into like adjusting difficulty settings, it would be more through some challenging setups. Like you start with less amount of families, you start in more challenging biomes, and maybe the king can request more things because that's just one aspect that is manageable to balance. But yeah, right now it's not in our roadmap, so I don't have any specific dates or if we will have time to do it at some point. But it's definitely something that could work if we ever get to it. And also the part of the question was about the soldier mechanic. So the way the soldiers will work, we will be introducing them in the military update, which comes in the third major update. Somewhere in I think April, around that we do. I'm skipping a little bit ahead, but we do major updates every 2 to 3 months. So that's where it could happen. And the military mechanic is splitting them into regiments, which the player is defining by saying what type of equipment each regiment should be wearing and which kind of weapon they should use to train with. And then they are going to be regularly training with them and increasing their skill, or like learning the skill to use that weapon or ride a horse. And you can also assign them to specialized regiments like the day guard or night guard, or also what we call laborers, which are people who would be doing the labor intensive work that is currently done by the ruling family. So right now ruling family is building houses or cooking, or when we add the military update, there's also going to be stables where you're going to be feeding the horses that you own. So this is kind of like a labor heavy stuff or activities that shouldn't really be done by the ruling family, and the soldiers who are in the laboring regiment would be responsible for that instead. And aside from that, you would also be able to sort of directly hunt down animals that are that you feel like are threatening you. So you would be able to say, this wolf needs to go, I'm worried that he's going to attack. So that will give you more abilities to defend yourself even early in the game before you get any hunters and this kind of stuff. And yeah, and also I should clarify, since this has been designed but we didn't start working on it yet, there are details that we didn't figure out yet. So any of this might change, but we're gonna start working on it pretty soon. So we've went into bigger detail already, and this is what we're hoping for. But as we implement stuff, we usually discover new things. So it might end up being a little bit different in the end. Is Mac coming? I cannot really say yes or no. It's fairly simple to publish a Mac build. The question is to maintain it and fix bugs around it, which would take significant amount of time out of our resources to make sure that when we are selling official mech builds, then they are actually working and stable and not crashing for people. So we're trying to focus on the base PC version. When that is working and we're in a good position to expand into more platforms, we're happy to do a Mac version, but right now we don't have any plans for it. Same situation comes with Linux builds as well. Yeah, those are the things I would love to do, but we have limited time. Will there be larger maps in the future? I don't know if this has been asked before. It has been. It has been many times, and we are also reaching to a point where, especially with the nobility update, there's going to be clergy added, and you will have to build a lot more houses and buildings than you needed so far as well. So the requirements on how much space you need to develop a village with all the features that are in the game is also increasing. So we are prioritizing the bigger maps right now in the next major update with the noblemen. We've been optimizing performance a little bit more so it can sustain as big maps as possible. We're hoping to have quadrupling the size of the map as something that runs on most PCs. But if we're not going to be able to optimize it that well, we might just double the size and support double the size of the map and keep the quadruple size experimental for people with more powerful computers. We're still evaluating that, so we'll see how that goes. But the size of the map will be optional, and we can even introduce smaller maps for extra challenge for people. So that is pretty much it's much easier to deliver smaller maps than bigger. So so next question would be, what features are you most excited to bring to the game? I think you can start with that one.
So I talked about things that are not really included yet, which was the like not scheduled to in a milestone, I think, which is the private storefront, which we have talked about a lot. Which is having like a person at the storefront which is not always there, which can go there when there's anyone coming to sell to try to buy stuff. Something we want, and maybe something we will manage. Then it was also, I guess, something maybe related to the military, which is to move away the construction from the people in the village. You said about the labor thing. We also talked about something else, which is having a separate profession. But then I guess the thing that is coming is the military people that able to police the city. I think that will be very interesting to see, to like sort of be like utilize the people in another way than you've done before.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I think the military features, that's kind of a point where the game becomes almost complete in the way I imagined it a few years ago. I sort of got inspired by the trinity of medieval feudal times, where you have the royalty, the labor, and the spirituality. So clergy most of the time, or like Christianity in Western world, and that to me is kind of like significant, iconic thing about medieval times, to have all of these three kind of power groups interacting with each other to create a society in the game. And now with the next update, we're going to be adding nobility and clergy, and we're just going to miss the military. So when the military comes in, that's where this kind of society simulation will be there, with all of these three power groups. In the beginning, the military will not do anything in the map specifically, aside from sending them to the war to fight for the king. So that will come with the criminality, which is also added in the same, like we first do the military, then we add the criminality, but when we release it as a public update, we release it together. So it's gonna be that build where I feel the game is really gonna come together. The last major update we have is then adding some things that are on top of it, so they are just increasing the depth of the game, and we're taking the time to polish the game as much as we can before the full release. So there are still things to be excited about, but I think for me that will be a point where the game will feel really complete, so I really look forward to that. And we are getting some questions in the chat as well. I think we're gonna go through them after we finish the Discord questions. Could please include a 2x1 flower bed pot in the next update?
Is it gonna be in the next update?
Probably not in the next update, but maybe in the next update. Yeah, we're gonna be adding home growing pots, so alchemists will be able to grow flowers for their potion production, and we also have 2x1 home growing pot, so that will be in the next update, I think, but not the flower bed. That's just decorational, and we don't have an asset for that yet, so that might take a little bit more. Would the books item be included in the next big update? That will, right?
I think we renamed them to manuscripts, but yes.
Oh, we did. Yeah, trying to be more historical.
Yeah, so with the clergy we will have scribers who will write books, and books are used for reading, which is a new type of thing we will introduce in the game, which are skills.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So apart from professions, there will also now be skills. So some of the things that previously have been part of a profession with the cooking is now part of a skill. And we will also have the reading and writing skills, and will be mostly for nobles and the clergy. And then we also have the what's the name again?
Oh, I keep forgetting it as well.
Consecration?
No, maybe.
Oh, it's like the learn.
Congregation, I think, maybe. Yeah.
Words.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the knowledge of like God, I guess.
Yeah, I was looking into what could this be, because we're sort of trying to design initiation process for novices in the clergy, and there could be a situation where you're gonna get a family member who already knows reading and writing, so then they would, as soon as they would join the clergy, they would already have the requirements met, and they would immediately jump into the initiation, which is kind of weird. I think there should be something that they study even if they already know reading and writing. So I was looking into what could that be, and I found some word which is describing exactly what they've been doing, because aside from learning reading and writing, they've been also studying sort of the history of God and studying the Bible in detail, and just increasing the depth of their knowledge around their faith, and then when they've become knowledgeable about it, they could get initiated as monks. So that's basically what it means, that they're just going to be reading a bunch of books until they learn that, and I just found some historically accurate name for it.
Yes, it's kind of interesting because it's like a new thing, that there's gonna be sort of like a ramp up, like that time, or would you say, like it's a starting time before you can actually join and get something produced, right? In not all the professions you have something kind of sort of like work right away, except if you're a child, you have like a time where you're not really producing. But now with the entry to the clergy, you will also have some time where you need to the villagers will need to learn how to read and write, and the spiritual message, I guess, to then be able to get into the clergy profession and then start producing these new type of resources.
Right. Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
It's also adding school, which has been suggested several times now, but it's not done in the exact way how people would expect. We're not going to be using it to teach people new professions. The school is exclusive for monks and nobles who want to learn reading and writing as well. So that's going to be a requirement for you to keep nobles happy and keep them around. You got to give them ability to learn reading and writing to their kids, and they will be essentially noble kids will be going to school to learn reading and writing, but we will not use it to expand professions that other peasants can know. We want to keep the loop of attracting new families as the main source of getting the professions in there.
Right. Yeah. So the next one.
Next one we have from Kalmorf. Considering that there's two sorts of players that play Lords and Villeins, one that seeks more in-depth realism and complex gameplay, and one that is more casual, builder for fun player, which one should be the game's public goal? If you hope of both, how customizable you plan to make Lords and Villeins in these fronts? So that is pretty difficult to answer. I think in general we do focus more on sort of relaxed and casual experience, which doesn't challenge the player in a way that you can lose everything immediately by one simple mistake, or here is a raid of barbarians suddenly raiding your city, and if you haven't been prepared for it, you can start over basically. Or, you know, here is a winter and everybody's now starving, and which is happening right now as well, but it's not the balance that we would be looking for. The game should be more relaxed and not intense. The whole aesthetics and the music that we do is playing around the art direction of being able to slow down with the game and enjoy the creative expression of building your settlement. That being said, the game is not always sunshine and roses. There is death, there can be sicknesses eventually, you will be executing people, there will be crimes and murders, so the game isn't really shying away from serious topics as well, but it's presenting them in more relaxed manner. So we also don't want to really create a game that is extremely complex and something more closer to Dwarf Fortress, where the simulation has layers on top of layers. We try to keep the design simple but effective, so there's only a few game mechanics that can interact with each other in very deep ways, but not introduce a large amount of systems that are sort of working in their own bubble. So yeah, I think that's an answer. What do you think?
Yeah, I think like in terms of how we work, I think I'm the one who going for more like complex and challenging, and then you put it down to no, we need to keep it nice and tidy.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, not question, but challenge in the design of the game, because on one hand we are making a city builder simulation game, and people come to them because they wanna play with those systems and see how the simulation can play out. But I think the major difference here is that we want to reduce micromanagement as possible. We would like to have a complex simulation with as little input as possible from the player, but at the same time not making it boring, right? If you would just press play and then watch the AI do everything, that wouldn't be fun. So we're trying to find a level where it feels fun and engaging, and there's always stuff to do, but we're not going to overwhelm the players, and we want to automate more things than you might be, like by the AI, than you might be seeing in other games.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to like play on the fantasy of you actually being a lord. I think we're like trying to more find the exceptions where we feel like we have to have the player do the input, and that's where we have gone with the building. But in other system, we try to make it like the ruler should be the one deciding this, or like could be the one deciding these things, right? So that's like how it goes with the assigning of the households and with the tenures and all this stuff. And the thing we can do exception is the placement of the structures and stuff, which would actually not be the ruler who decides where you should put your chair, if it should be in this place or this place, right?
Yeah, it's actually a question we ask ourselves a lot whenever we are not sure about something. It's like, does this fit into a fantasy of being a ruler? Would this be a thing that a ruler would be doing in some way or other? And that helps us decide if it's the right way to go, because we really want to, hit that feeling that you are a ruler, you're not someone micromanaging their daily routines, or directly controlling them. And even having that contrast of you can't actually decide everything, and the AI has some sort of a free will and can decide things on their own, can create interesting situations, because now you as a ruler have an agency, because that means if you can't control people directly, you must control them indirectly. You can punish them or reward them, and that creates much more interesting interaction with the game than just having your pawns that you can move around.
Yeah, that's something we're also doing in the newer updates. That is, the granting and seizing system will actually have an effect on the villagers, how they like it with their reputation. So now you can't just solve everything with the granting and seizing, because they will take notice of this and be happy or angry with you. So you should actually try to solve it with the tenors. So we try to push it back from the micromanagement to the more ruling actions that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we can move to the next question.
Yeah.
How devs plan to keep the update schedule? I've answered it a little bit earlier. We have right now we're on a system where we have major updates laid in the roadmap, which there are planned 4 of them, if I count correctly. One was already released. The second one is the nobility and clergy update, which is planned somewhere in January. Then we're going to be releasing the military and criminality update, and after that we should be doing the full release version, which will be adding some features like high console and ruling decisions and events, but mostly also do some final balancing and bug fixing. So the last major update will be more focused on making a stable and complete game rather than adding new big features. If there will be new features in that one, they will be of a smaller scale. We also always, after releasing a major update, we are monitoring anything that goes wrong and issuing a minor hotfix patch, where we mostly fix bugs, but sometimes when we add new features and then we create a lot of cumbersome UI experiences or confusing, things end up being confusing, we also address them if there is an easy way to improve it in the minor patch, which usually comes about 2 to 3 weeks after the major patch has been released. And we are hoping that that's enough. We still don't know. We just had one major patch and we did the minor patch after it, and so far it's been manageable. I can't say the game is bug free or perfectly balanced, but we try to prioritize our schedule and going through the features, because we could make sure that every major update that we release is going to be highly stable and highly balanced and to 100%, and then as soon as we add another feature, we break a lot of other stuff, and it would just multiply the workload that we would need to do throughout the development by a lot. So we try to just be efficient and only fix bugs that are very significant, that would prevent people from having fun or crash the game or completely break the economy to the point where you can't even engage with it on a reasonable level. And as soon as that is met, we're trying to focus on the next major update. At the same time, and this is also why the last major update, the release version, is giving a lot more time to balancing and bug fixing, because that's where we're going to claim that the game is coming out of early access, so it should be it should meet the standard of a full released game, as you would normally expect. Yep.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah, next question. I need to learn how to breathe.
Yeah. So let's see. So far, the game has a stable behavior apart from a few weird AI decisions and the priorities. What do you plan to change, and what should we expect in a finished AI state?
Yeah, I think that's a question for you.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, I don't know. Actually, it's we're always building on top of the AI with more like goals and things for them to do. So I think like that, and like improving the existing behavior where it doesn't really make sense. I think when we get into maybe bigger maps, we will see some more like cutoff points where they can interact in certain areas. But we're trying to like improve their like logistics behavior, so they don't end up trying to walk all over the place. So that's a big part. When they're trying to sell things, they go to all the stores and pick up one carrot or something. That's not something really want to see. So I think just general improvements all over the place. But yeah, I'm not sure if there's any specific thing that we are gonna add to the AI.
Yeah, I think at this point we have all the core functionality that the AI needs to have for the full game is there. We will always be expanding it with more content, because every time there is a new zone, we need to teach the AI how to use that zone. So that's technically work on the AI, but it's expanding on the systems that are already there. I think something that's being brought up a lot is like villagers walling themselves off. That may be something we will look into at some point, but it's a pretty difficult problem to solve, and it increases performance of the game, possibly significantly. We don't really know yet, so I'm not sure if that will happen, since it's something that the players can also prevent by building in more smart ways, or we can make more of the structures walkable so they don't end up in those situations as often as they are. And also AI regarding the storefronts. I don't know if you mentioned that. That's something.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it. I think it's not really planned in a specific milestone, but we talked about. I said when I had things I was looking forward to. I think. One of those things was the storefront, the private storefront, so the seller don't have to stand there all day. They can be there only when a transaction, like a sell and purchase, is happening. So you would sort of be able to make us like an in-house store, I guess, and they could just walk around and work, and then when someone comes to buy, they would go to the storefront and make the transaction, and then go back to work.
Yeah. And also, you've mentioned the resource management a little bit. There's been one thing with building. Right now they grab one resource for each roof, even though they can grab like 6 wood pieces and then build 6 roofs in a row. That's something we could also improve to cut down on the traveling time of villagers, because that's getting a bigger and bigger issue in the game as we are adding more features and making bigger maps. And there was also one more thing about the AI. This is not really AI of the NPCs, but it is more on a general level, like how we price resources, how the economy of the game is simulated. That is something that always has potential to improve, and we will do adjustments as we find the current situation limitations of the current systems. We started from one point, eventually we learned how the game works and where's the limitations. For example, with the pricing, we first had a very simple system, then we realized villagers really need to be able to forecast to the future to not make the prices fluctuate so significantly. So we added some prediction capabilities of the AI to make better decisions if they actually should be increasing the price or not. And as we move forward, we might realize this is still not enough, or other aspects of the simulation, and then we're going to come up with new solutions to improve it. It's sort of like implementing simulation of a real-world economy, but much more simplified. And the question for us is how big what areas of the economy we want to actually have in that game, and to which level we're going to make it abstract and more general. So, but we take a lot of inspiration from real-life economy things, or kind of rule of thumbs, I guess, or how stonks work.
How we think stonks work.
Yeah, exactly. Just to keep it authentic, essentially. But there's also like game design motivation. Like, for example, the price of the goods wouldn't have to change at all. We could just keep it stable and the game would work. But we decided to make it dynamic, partly because it's more interesting, but also because it creates this pressure on the player that if they don't pay attention to balancing the input and output of their economy, they're gonna end up having less balanced pricing, and then more villagers will be more likely to become poor and starve out of lack of resources. So this creates a lot like more pressure, and also gives incentive to care, which makes the game more engaging and fun. So there's also motivations purely to make the game more engaging. So far the game have a stable behavior apart from a few weird AI decisions.
No, this is the same.
Oh, right. Does Lords and Villeins have support for any modding platform? If yes, which one?
Not yet.
We do have some others though.
Yes. Map size mod, which
Yeah,
will
map
soon be
size
deprecated because we're implementing it.
Yeah, we started the modding channel on our Discord, and very quickly there's been few people figuring out how it should be modded, or like how it can be modded, and they've created some really cool mods. But yeah, we don't.
But we I think we already said it was like post-launch support thing. So as soon as we release the game, we will look into it more.
Yeah.
To see what we can do about it. But yeah, not during the during the milestones we have it.
Yeah, we originally wanted to have it before the full release of the game, and then we started to look into it, and it's a lot more work than I would have thought. Not only we are sort of, when we are implementing the game, we are trying to think of mod support as we do it. For example, as much content as possible we try to implement in a way that is easily modifiable by just finding a file and changing some values in it and then publishing it as mod. Replacing textures on things so you can create texture packs. This is the type of stuff that we keep in mind, and we try to implement the game in a way that will make that as easy as possible with the resources that we have for it. But before we would call it an official mod support, we would need to finalize some of those concepts and push a lot further in this direction, as well as implement tools to work with the Steam Workshop, because when you want to integrate Steam Workshop in your game, you don't just download some library and connect with Steam API. You also have to implement systems that, or like tools that allow uploading the content to Steam Workshop and downloading it, checking compatibility problems, having some reporting system in the game if some of them are deprecated for each version, and that just ends up being tons of work we wouldn't have time to do before the full release. So we had to cut it out of our scope, and we are hoping that after the game is finished, we will be able to continue working on it and add mod support, and that would then be our first priority after release, basically. When would be a thief a real deal?
Yeah, it's the next.
It's the criminality.
Not this one.
Yeah. Not this one, but the next one. Yeah. I don't know if he will be real deal.
Real deal? No.
He will be really dealing some thievery. Yeah, we don't have detailed design of the thieves right now. I'm thinking more in abstract terms currently, like some high level points of how would I like to imagine criminality to be in the game. We're thinking to, because we're measuring wealth of each family, so poverty would then translate into higher criminality rates, and we also want to be looking into the fear factor. So if you have tons of guards around your settlement, criminality will be less likely, but at the same time your reputation will be struggling. So if you wanna scare your people, you will be having sort of diminishing returns, or this kind of negative feedback loop, that the worse ruler you are, like the more mean you are to your people, the more guards you will need to have them still follow your orders. And one way for them to disobey is increased criminality rates. So then you would find more and more thieves running around and causing problems and just doubling down on these problems. So what you would want to do ideally is be nice to them and have reasonable amount of guards, because there's always going to be someone. Or not, if you just want to go crazy and see what it's like, that's that's exactly why the system is there. We want people to try it and see if they have fun with it. Having that choice is the important thing. Yeah, and what types of criminal actions will be there, we don't know yet. I think definitely stealing and some kind of murder as well. If there's going to be other stuff like vandalism, or outright setting houses on fire or something like that, that's much more questionable. Probably will not happen, because that adds a lot of more work that we wouldn't have time for. But yeah. Ooh, new questions have been added since. How do you feel about distance in the game, especially regarding to buildings? This is describing several situations where it's a problem. Do you...
I haven't heard anything, I think. Traveling around the town is time consuming for a villager because houses are so huge. To do stuff inside of them. The mills have a little 4 to 6 windmills inside of it. Since the new game mechanic appears to be optimizing time travel between businesses, so how do you feel about where the game is at in this regard, and what would you change, if anything? I mean, we're already trying, I guess, to figure this out a bit with the optimization of the logistics, so you would have less time traveling to pick things up if things are more condensed located. I think one part of this is the player to solve, to try to have these sort of connected production chains close to each other. It's something we talked about very early. So you could have these storefronts in those private in those houses also that are like connected per production chain, and they would have like a high efficiency in their trading. But then it's like, I guess the marketplace is also like connecting all the wares in one place. But yeah, I mean, the sizes of the houses is sort of up to the player how big they want to do it. So I'm not sure, because we can't make the villagers infinitely fast, and we have just at a certain time of the day. So I guess like making the right choice of cutting out some distance in like trying to make those cut points, I guess, so you don't walk across the whole map to just find a chair to sit on, and we're already doing these kinds of things. So I think it's more in that direction to say like, okay, if there's a storefront too far away, you don't consider it, you try to just buy from the closer ones.
There's also things that we've already talked about improving logistics of things, so they can grab more stuff at the same time before they do something, so we're kind of planning ahead. There's been suggestions about logistics oriented families. We are thinking more of having that across the board, that all of the AI would do that on some level, where they would try to figure out what is the best location to store things, and when they have some time they would go and store it closer to where it's going to be needed, so when they actually have to use it, they don't have to, they already did the traveling ahead of time when it's not a problem, that kind of a thing. And the house size, I was hoping that could be solved with the tavern, because when you, or like the inn, because now you don't really need to build kitchen everywhere, which reduces the amount of structures significantly that you need to build in every house. We're also expanding on the public zone, so there could be more structures shared amongst other families, so then the sizes of the houses will not need to be as big. But the problem with that is, if you prefer that kind of playstyle and you don't really want everybody to go into the inn, then there's no real way around it. You're just gonna have big houses, and then we need to make bigger maps, and we need to find ways to make sure that the traveling times are manageable. And sort of like last resort thing is making the days longer. That's being suggested quite a lot, and I'm not saying no to that, but at the same time we would like to have some kind of generations in the game playing out, and we think about when you open a new map, you're gonna spend 20 to 30 hours on one map before you will fully develop it, and you will feel like there isn't really much more goals to pursue. So that would be something of a goal for us. And we'll try to scale the length of the day so that when you play a map around these 20-30 hours, you will see like 2 or 3 generations of families play out. If we make the days longer, then that's coming down to 2 generations, sometimes even 1. Then we can balance how quickly people age as well. But I think we are already sort of on a limit there, so increasing the length of the day would just take away from other things which I feel like are also important. So we're trying to do that only when it's absolutely necessary. I'm curious whether there are any suggestions you've read that you think are really cool but just not right for this game. So I've been reading through them, and not really any that wouldn't be like if there's been suggestions that I think are not really fit for the game and would be really cool in other games, like combat and battles, like large-scale battles. This is something we try to like I've always focused on the local experience and making sure that whatever is playing out in the settlement. And also I didn't want to make this loop of defending from attackers from afar. I really wanted to make sure that it's a settlement builder, you're developing a city, it's not a RTS strategy or something like that. So we're not implementing these kinds of battles. You will be sending soldiers to war, but that war will not play out. You will just see the result of it. So your soldiers can come back, some of them at least, if they survived. And it's going to be part of the relationship with the king that you are maintaining. But I think it would be cool if there would be some kind of grand battles. You know, you send soldiers to war, and then we load a new map, and then we simulate the fight, and then the result of the fight is the war. But I think that would just not be right fit. Another thing was also multiplayer. That's been requested many times. Especially local multiplayer, like 2 players on the same map. I think that would be really cool, but I don't think it would like reasonably work as a video game that's fun and not really confusing. And that's before I even start thinking about the complexities of implementing it. So that's just not the right fit for many reasons. There is version of multiplayer that we are thinking about, like you could have multiple settlements trade between each other. So they could, instead of caravans, that caravan could be another player coming to your settlement. And that's something I think could be a good fit for the game, but also it would double the scope of our of what we can do, almost, I would say. So that's something we will probably never do just because of how big feature it would be. Yeah, I don't know if you have something.
No, I was also thinking about the multiplayer thing. But no.
Yeah. Maybe you think of something that
I
would
think
be
that bit.
good.
I always think of those things.
Yeah. Should I just move on? Yeah.
Move on.
On Steam, I read about beta testing. Where can we apply? Do we PM on Discord, or is there a form? Is it even open yet? Are there specific qualifications? I've never beta tested, but this game is fun, so I'd love to apply when we're allowed to. Thank you for the feedback, by the way. So the way the beta testing works is that every time we're approaching the next major update or minor patches, we are looking into expanding we call it High Council, which is the group of closed beta testers. So we are always posting on the Discord that there is a next round, and people click an icon to show their interest, and then we're picking several people based on how many people dropped out of the last round. We try to keep somewhat small group of testers, so the feedback that we get is more focused and we can follow up with everybody. So that's why the numbers are limited, and we're not really doing open betas, at least not yet. We might do one for the full release. But yeah, there's always new spots being open for almost every, if not all. So far it's been all of them. We've been always opening up more slots before major update. And the way we decide is by looking into the more active people on our Discord. So we usually prefer to have people who are already showing a lot of interest in the game, and so there is a high chance that they're going to be playing the game and giving us some valuable feedback, rather than blocking the spot for someone who's just going to run it once and say it's good or bad and then move on. So that is mostly how it is. There is always some luck involved as well, because there is no way I can check these 30 or 40 people who are always clicking it that they want to join. So sometimes people just have to get lucky as well. But yeah, this is the way how it works. Yeah, and we also list we continuously update the credits with people who are part of the closed beta testing. So that's kind of our way of saying thank you for giving us this detailed feedback. Yeah.
All right.
Will there be more or combat? I think I've already answered that kind of. I like that it's from Mountain Blade Knight. That kind of says it all. Yeah. Should I add something more to it? I think I just answered it.
I mean, we already have some sort of combat between animals and villagers, right? So that's sort of the combat I guess we will have.
Yeah.
The existing system.
Yeah, there is like fighting of hunters between, like, hunters are fighting animals, animals are fighting animals, villagers fight villagers when they get into a fist fight in an argument, and when we add criminality and guards, then when guards are hunting down criminals, they will also use violence. So that's a form of combat that will be in the game. There also will be a war in more of an abstract way, where the regiments that you're going to be training, you will be sending them into a war, and then after a while, few in-game years, they're going to come back or not, if nobody survived. So that's kind of a war that happens in the game, but other than sending the soldiers there, you're not really participating in it. This one is interesting. What's your favorite cheese and how do you like to eat it? Yeah, I don't know if I have a favorite one. I think I like Gouda. Gouda's good. And blue cheese is also really nice. How do I like to eat it though? With a fork.
No, with honey.
With a honey,
Yes,
right?
like
Yeah.
Brie with honey.
Yeah. I've learned that here in Sweden. Apparently in Sweden people put honey on cheese, and I never knew that. And I tried it. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's kind of like
some
weird.
biscuit,
Even
cheese
biscuit.
and cheese and honey. Yeah. Yum yum.
It's kind of like salt and.
marmalade. So many combinations.
So many. It's like all the tastes in one, and your brain just cannot process it. Like, what is this? Overflow. Yes, yeah. Yeah, fat and sugar. It's like all you need.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have a favorite cheese? You didn't say a favorite one. You just said how you like to eat it.
I don't know. I like blue cheese. I like brie. I guess brie is nice to go to cheese.
Nice. I hope we did a justice to this one. Thank you for a lovely question. Okay, what level of kingdom level strategy do you envision being in the final release of the game? Will we be able to interact with other towns, their noble families, engage in diplomacy, send attacks or fend off attacks? Something like the diplomacy system in classic city builders like Zeus, Poseidon, Pharaoh. Seems like it would fit well. So I think I've talked about most of the systems that touch on the diplomacy. One I think I didn't mention yet was marriage requests. That's being added in the next major update. The noble families that you will accept in your settlement, you will be able to propose them a marriage request, and they will also propose a marriage, like a second marriage from your family. So if that's possible, so then you will get new family member, and you will lose one other family member which will join their family. And this is sort of a negotiation process, so you will be taking a bet on who is more likely to accept your request. If you fail, that's going to hurt your reputation with them, and then you can try with a new proposal later. If you succeed, then it's going to increase the reputation. So that can be seen as a form of diplomacy. We're going to expand on the king's relationship with the soldiers and regiments. We're thinking of new ways of using the favor system, because right now it's not as useful as I think it needs to be for it to justify the high cost that it takes to receive it. I think it's kind of underwhelming right now, so maybe there's going to be something diplomatic about that. And in the last major update, we're also going to be adding council, where you will be selecting specific people, especially noble people, to represent certain positions. Someone will be in charge of the treasury, someone will be in charge of the military, of the clergy, and selecting the correct position will boost relationships with a family that they are part of, and give some other bonuses in activities related to that area. So military can get some boosts, clergy can get some boosts from depending on who is assigned. So there is some kind of diplomatic choice who is going to be in that council. It can also be just all of your family members, and you will not even assign other nobles, but it's something that you can leverage. So that would be sort of a form of diplomacy that we will get to. Unfortunately, and there's also diplomacy around clergy.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to expand on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, so in the clergy update now, you will be sort of having a weekly task of donating to the clergy. So it will sort of be like all the noblemen, like the noble families in the village, will sort of want to have like the favor with the clergy, because that's in the long run gonna be like they're holding the mass, so they're sort of like speaking to the people about you, I guess, in some way, maybe about some other noble family in some way. So you sort of want to have like a good relationship with them, and you gain the relationship with these like weekly donations. So there is this like a very, I guess, complex system in place where you will try to bet on donations for every week, and the other families will try to match you if you're higher, and they will try to go over you if you have like a bad relationship with the specific noble families, and in that way they will try to push you down from the from having a good relationship with the clergy, and then you will suffer from that, and they will also gain a reputation with the clergy. But if you also like do the opposite, if you try to overthrow them, they will also be unhappy with you, and this can also result in them actually leaving the village. So it's sort of, if you want to be like good with everyone, you try to have to match your donations with the other noble families, so you don't try to overthrow them too much. So yeah, it's a very complex way. But
we had many discussions.
Yeah, I mean, we have to also try it out, see how well it works, but that's the current way we're thinking about it.
Eat Your Cookie says that sounds like an auction. It's kind of like a hidden auction. Like you don't know how people are betting, and you're gonna only figure it out after it's been evaluated, and you can take that into account for the next week. So it's sort of like continuous game of what is it called? Someone is running away and you're trying to catch them constantly. We're sort of leveraging the clergy's position here as the power group that can have influence on their own, because they are so ingrained in society that even the ruling class can't always control everything they do. So they have this leverage, and they are leveraging it against the player by trying to get their resources, their money mostly, and the way they force them to give them that money is by playing this game of favorites. So they're going to favorite other noble families if they donate them more, and if you're not the one who's favored, you might start to see your reputation being hindered because they have that influence over people. So you gotta make sure that you match your influence with others.
Yeah, and this also sort of ties into how the taxes are going to be updated, because we're going to have specific taxes for the clergy. So you're going to be able to, on the farm you will have a sausage, and you will have specify you want to have this percentage to you as the ruler, and you have this percentage to the clergy. So in the same way here, if you would not play with the systems, and you would instead do the granting things from the financing book, you can now end up in over donating to the clergy by this, and then you would actually screw up your game with the clergy and the other noblemen. So you sort of have to balance this out, how much you put percentage in the taxes, and then try to just tip it off with your money, maybe money donations in the end of the week with the gold. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah. I will have a lot of work balancing this right now.
Yeah. All right. So
we can move to the next one. Why hasn't my phenomenal suggestion on economic fixes not been directly copy-pasted into your roadmap yet?
It has been. The roadmap is just, we have a secret version of it. And I think, in all seriousness, I've been going through the requested features that we have on our Discord, and I've been copy-pasting to a separate document all of those that are suggesting balancing improvements on the economy side of things, and then removing them from the list, because for one, we want to keep that list more focused on requested features, not requested solutions to balancing problems. But I still keep that feedback in a separate file, so I can use it to improve the balancing. And there's a lot of information that I can work with, and there's a lot of systems that interact with each other, so it's very difficult to say what is the correct solution and what is the correct answer here or there. And so all I can promise is that I'm reading it all, and I'm taking it into account, and when I'm going to be focusing on the balancing in the following weeks so that it's improved in the next major update, I'm going to be improving these aspects of the game to the best of my ability. So when will you make Ate Your Cookie take the job of cleaning the requested features for you? Maybe a little bit of a context here. We had some discussions in our tavern on our Discord, because the requested feature list is being used a lot, which is great, but that also means people can't really vote on them, because the more features are added, the more in the history of the chat they are, and people don't end up reading them as much, which creates a lot of bias in the voting, because it's basically how more active the more active the Discord is at a given time, and people are more likely to see the feature and vote on it. And if it's a period of time where people are not as active, then these features are not being voted. So we're thinking on how to solve this. Maybe we're gonna have some other system where these features or requests are more visible and easier to manage. I'm also thinking to treat the requested feature list as a form of feedback without the voting necessarily, so it's more for us to make sure that if there is something that people want us to see, we're not going to miss it in the lively feedback channels. But yeah, we'll see how it works, because setting up these systems and managing them takes a lot of time, and we prefer putting that time into the game sometimes. So I'm not sure if we're going to do something like that, but that's kind of the situation. And yeah, there's been some people have been volunteering to help us manage it, and we're definitely be expanding some mods on the Discord as it grows in the future. Right now it's still in the levels where we can manage it ourselves. Sometimes it takes a while before I can clear a requested features list or respond to things, but I think it's still not over a limit that we couldn't manage ourselves. But as the game grows and the community is constantly growing every day, we're definitely going to be in need of managing the community, having more guidelines, and trying to make sure that community is a nice place. So we will be reaching out to interested people if they want to help us and into making this community a more welcoming place.
Yeah. Could we add the plague to the game?
What do you think? How do you like an idea of plague?
I like it very much. Yeah, I think we talked about this very early as well.
Yeah.
But I'm not yeah, that's also...
I have a surprise for you.
Well, we have sickness.
We have a sickness in the game planned for the next version, internal version, not the public update yet, which is designed as a sickness which can develop under certain circumstances, and then it can spread to people in proximity. So if we create a type of sickness which has a high spread chance and high proximity, we will have a plague with a small, and we can, like, the way I designed it is that there is a probability of spreading, but there's also a probability of surviving. So it could be balanced in a way that everybody gets it, but like 10% people survive it. And then you would have this kind of a plague. My worry with that is that this is exactly in the lines of like RimWorld gameplay style, where you can have a single event that just wipes everything out, which is fun, but it's also not exactly what we want to create with this game. So I don't know if we will have exactly like what you imagine when you say a plague, but there's sicknesses will definitely be there. People will get regularly sick. They will go to a hospital to heal, and sometimes it will kill people for sure. But I'm not thinking right now to have these kinds of widespread wiping out events. This sounding a little too real. I think we can all relate to that, unfortunately. Ate Your Cookie is asking if they will be able to keep the money of the dead people. Yes. Yes. I mean, the rest of the family will first, but when all of them die, you get their stuff.
Yeah,
So.
like they might try to run away with their money.
Crawling out of the map. It's like, you're not gonna get my money.
Stubborn old man.
Desert biome. It's an interesting idea.
I mean, that would be part of updating the map generation.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, it's on the indie backlog of nice to have things. And
Which is very long.
Yeah, but yeah, it's for sure like updating the map generation would be very interesting and fun. But it's also, we have a lot of tasks ahead of us, so this yeah, nice to have thing, I would say.
Yeah, I think designing new biomes is fairly easy, though I think the ones we have right now are already covering the range of possibilities we could do. The desert biome would be making a setting where the sand terrain is more prioritized. But I think that would be a little boring because there's no trees growing.
Very much hard mode.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it could be an interesting challenge for people, so for sure we could introduce it. But I think with the assets we currently have in the game, it would end up feeling underwhelming when you actually get to generate a map like this, and all you see is just vast lands of sand with occasional oases of water and few trees around it. I think that would not really look interesting, and so even though it would be challenging, I wouldn't probably be comfortable publishing it as something like, if we're doing desert biome, I think we should do more than just that, and that means something we can't just do easily at that point. One of my big stumbling blocks starting is that my ruler's family takes forever to build their house, even with the full 5 members. Where am I screwing up? Is there even a is it even a question of the user? I think this is more because the ruling family can be small, and they also take one resource at a time, or like they take the resources for one wall and build it. So especially if you're building roofs, then it takes forever. All of these things we've covered already, that they will be improved in the future by making sure that villagers can gather more resources before they go building. But also when we add the military update, you will be able to recruit as many people as you want into the labor regiment, and those will be then doing all the buildings. So then you can multiply the amount of people who will be building stuff, and then it gets much faster.
Yeah, Also, probably some of those members might be children, and children are not building
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
So they might actually just be free people who are building.
Yes, I'm sometimes wondering if we should call them children or just teenagers, because like when you actually look at them, they're not like, they're smaller, but they're not that small. And yeah, like we due to the interesting life cycle of our game, they get born as teenagers, so they just pop in out of existence.
Wouldn't make much sense to have them as
That's like
toddlers.
adoption I like way more because that actually makes sense. Banners and flags. This is probably like designing a sigil for a noble family or your own family.
Yes. And
Yeah, it's
I think it's also the nice to have thing we
Yeah.
talked about.
It was in the plan some time ago. Then we got more realistic about what we can do, and we had to move it to a nice to have list of things, because it's a lot of art to produce, and yeah, implementation wise it's not that complicated I think, but the art we would need to make for it to have it interesting is quite a bit, so we couldn't do that right now. But for sure, at some point maybe if we get there, it's something I would really like to see in the game. At least I can say that. Will the king offer a different reward besides families? So that touches on the favor system. I've read one really interesting idea today, especially coupled with the larger maps, to use it to purchase new land to expand. I think that would create a really interesting progression and a very nice incentive to engage with the favor system. So that's something I'm really thinking about right now to do. But I have not made any decision on that yet. Other things I've heard people suggesting was requesting supplies of resources, like specific resources, or what I'm thinking about more is having more options about which families you can request, how skilled they're gonna be, so you can scale the favor points, how you spend them. Yeah, we'll see. This is something that I just identified that this is a problem, and we don't have correct specific solutions for it yet, but we have ideas. Yeah, but other than that, we don't really treat the king as someone who's supposed to reward you. He's rewarding you by allowing you to have a land and profit from it. So I don't really want to make the king as someone who's making you rich, really, because that would go against the fantasy of being a medieval ruler. Peasant Revolt's possible. Let's say I want to be a tyrant in the game. Right now they don't seem to care if I charge them high taxes and resources. And we got live question, quick jump new one.
Yeah, I mean this is something we talked about also very early. I'm not sure if it's still in the roadmap.
It is. Yeah, it is the last major update, and it's going to be very simple. There's going to be a threshold, after which you run a risk of triggering a revolt event, and then we're just gonna, trigger AI to hunt down all of your family members, while also triggering all guards to fight back, if your morale is good. If you will also, because there's also a morale system for the regiments, which is about happiness and soldier pay to keeping it high enough. But if your morale with the military will be good enough, while the revolt would happen, they will defend you. If not, they will fight with them. And as you might already experienced, having all of your ruling family members dead is game over state. You could survive it and then rebuild again, but this will be like the ultimate punishment for exploiting your people too much. And also the amount of guards will be pushing back against the probability of it happening. So you can, the whole idea was always that you can be a bad ruler, really mean to your people, but then you need to scare them a lot more by having more guards in the settlement. So it will kind of work against each other. And then there's one more which I don't think people can see unless I change this, but I'm just going to read it. I know this might be hard to implement, but do you guys have ideas of adding trading ships or ports? We have, and it's something that I have in this box of potential DLCs somewhere, sometime in the future. I think there's a lot of very interesting content that could be done with ships and ports, and trading with different nations through those ports, having maybe pirates in the game. There's a lot of very nice and cool stuff that could be done in this direction. Even to the point that I could see a very themed around it DLC, which is just focusing on this kind of stuff. But it's definitely not going to happen during early access or as any of the post-release support patches that would be happening, where we want to focus more on the mod support than adding new content. So that was Discord questions. We have a few more. I think we can go through the chat now if there's been some new. And then we have a few more on Reddit. So we're going to be done soon. Is there anything? Hi there, like your game a lot, thank you. Michael is way too quiet.
Question mark?
Question mark. What is your favorite fruit?
Mango.
Mango. I would say is coconut a fruit? But I'm betraying the mango.
No, I don't know.
No, mango, obviously mango. We have to stay loyal to the mango. Sound issues. Still echo. Yeah, this is for the sound as well. Have you guys thought about implementing some sort of diplomacy? So that's been covered. For performance reasons, as well as it being very distracting, can you tone down the rain snow effects? I like seeing them, but it makes a lot of movement on the screen. That is an interesting feedback. I haven't thought about it being distracting. Yeah, I will have to think about it. Like in a sense, they should be noticeable because they impact your gameplay. So you should know that there is a rain happening. You shouldn't be able to easily miss it. But maybe they are happening too often. That could also be a problem. If they're happening too often and then becomes more frustrating, then that's not a pleasant experience. What I'm also thinking, maybe have some toggleable option as a slider in the options, or like, you know, less intense weather effects or more intense, or yeah, just looking into this more. This is the first time I'm hearing it, so
yeah, I mean they change the gameplay by like it modifies the temperature of the map, and then it's also for the rain specifically it improves the growth of crops and trees. So.
Dark Scott is clarifying that the frequency is fine, but the number of sprites on the screen is the issue. Yeah, like the density of the texture. Yeah, you know, I can try see if I can make it like less intense while still feeling like this is noticeable enough. Yeah, so we'll see. I have to investigate more.
Yeah, there's probably some improvements I think in that.
Yeah. Okay, so we went through the chat. If we missed anything, please let us know. We can repost the question. We tried to go through the chat. Warband Place says, love the game, guys. Definitely unique with the feudal aspects. Thank you very much. And we have few more on, and I'm just gonna have to, because this thing will be broken again. So I'm just gonna try to do it like this. Where is the questions? Oop. No, perfect. So on Reddit, Mr. JDog has asked, what does your roadmap look like for future updates? Is combat going to be implemented, and how do you plan on including it? We did cover that but if you wanna know the full roadmap, I think we've covered all of the updates. So there's been details said, I think, about every single one of them. But detailed description you can also find on
lordsandvilleins.com, or even better on Steam. On the forums we have a pinned post where we describe in detail all the features that are planned for each update, so you can get more information there. I'm gonna reply with a link to this a little bit later. Still Association is asking, how much did you research medieval society while designing the game? Did you have to change any aspect of the design? Okay, this is not... Oh. Maybe this is probably better. Yeah. Did you have to change any aspects of the design once you learned something new? Do you wanna...
Like,
I
yes.
mean, I've been doing most of the research, but
I think we always do research when we find things. I think you do first, and then I also do it sometimes when we implement things to see how they really work. I think recently, I think it was the pigs, I guess.
Yeah.
That we are reworking, I guess, the visuals on them because they are not looking like pink pigs do today.
Yeah, we would like to do that. Right now it's nice to have.
Okay, yeah. So
But sometimes we learn new things that, like, oh, that was a thing? Like, pigs not being pink? Like, you are so used to it from popular culture. And it's very interesting to dig into it and find out about all of this. I've been doing, most of the research I've been doing was in the early stages of the game. This game kind of started as a tavern simulator. I was playing a lot of Prison Architect at the time, and I was thought it would be cool if instead of prison you're managing a tavern, and instead of cells you're managing rooms for people. And then I did it. I did some kind of like prototype, and I felt like a tavern without a city is kind of boring. So I shifted the design towards the city builder, and then I got really interested into medieval history and trying to basically design the game as an authentic historical experience. Later I moved on more from historically inspired than historically accurate, because I realized a lot of the times making the game fun first and historically accurate second is a better way to go for us. So I'm not always like doing things exactly right, and I've also made a deliberate decision to not have any specific place in the world or time in the history where the game plays out. We're sort of creating our own version of medieval times, so it can be it's not tied to any specific place, so it wouldn't really be fair to say but 1400 in UK, that's not how it was, right? Because if it was like that somewhere else in the world, like for example we have corn in the game, and later I found out corn wasn't really European vegetable in medieval times. It was in the America though, and so we're not really, just because of it wasn't in Europe, we're not going to take it out of the game, even though I didn't know it before I added it, to be honest. But this is the sort of thing where historically inspired is more important. All of the professions that I've added to the game, or re-added to the game, have been research on mostly on the internet and sometimes from books, how they used to be done. I try to gather as many materials as I have available, but it's more of a hobby. Like we don't have a team of historians or anyone dedicated who would know this exactly. So there's probably something that I got wrong, but I try to get as much inspiration as possible to be authentic. So I researched in detail how they used to make swords and what kind of structures and tools they would use to make them, and how they used to make beer the old-fashioned way, and then I designed the whole process of the production based on this information. So every time we add a new zone or new profession, we do a lot of research on how it was done historically speaking. And then historically inspired I was also by, in the clergy, we took a lot from Christianity, how it used to be. We try to, in the game also, not mention that this is specifically Christianity. We try to be inspired by it, but not claim that this is how it was and that this is what Christianity is. We just take some inspiration from it. And other than that, there's things that are widely known that in feudal times there was a king and they lend you land. But what was very interesting actually, when I tried to research how feudalism actually worked, I've learned that it was a mess. For example, I tried to figure out tax collection on the royal level and different like laws, like has there been some royally defined laws around like you need to collect 15% and this and that, and like turns out that it was just different regions, even in the same country, had different rules, and it came down to negotiation, probably because they couldn't communicate with internet as we can today. So they could just do whatever and fake tax reports and all of that stuff. So in the end I just found whatever was interesting and used it if it was good for the game. And also what I tried whenever we did UI, like the tenure when it comes up and you are assigning a zone, that went over many iterations, but the first iteration of the game was a direct text from some historical paper about also fealty that was some peasant family giving to the local lord when they were swearing loyalty in order to get the land. So I took pieces of that text and I put it into the UI, and parts of it are still there, but over time we had to focus more on the gameplay and remove the flavor text so it doesn't become really huge. But yeah, those were the more major sources of inspiration. Yeah. And the last question on Reddit, one wish I've had to make the industry a little more manageable is giving players some direct control over the goods can be bought and sold to caravans. For example, only sell hides to caravans when the city has more than 40, or not allowing any families to buy boots from caravans. What do you think about it?
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, we're surely gonna look on, I think we talked about this, looking at their purchasing and like, I guess, hoarding behavior and see how we can improve this where it makes sense. I can see that it makes sense that they would not like sell off wood if they are still processing wood for a few more days, right? So I think there's like potential improvement here. But yeah, I mean, direct telling them that they cannot sell the families, I don't think that's something we want, because it's not really the rule or to go in and say that. You would be able to make the like selling directly to the caravan for the finance book, but not tell the families that they are not allowed to sell.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been thinking about like market manipulation by the ruler is something that could be done, even like thinking about how it makes sense for a ruler to be doing that. Like a ruler can say, this week marketplace is closed, like there's embargo on something. But I think once we start doing that, there's so many scenarios where it could become applicable, and the game shifts heavily towards micromanaging. So I look at those solutions as something that we should use as little as possible, and we should always first try to balance the economy so that this is not really an issue for the player, that like people should be able to trade freely, and you should rarely see it as a problem. Right now that's not really the case, because people sell stuff when they shouldn't, and there's values that can be tuned. If it's not going to be enough after we tune them, maybe we're going to introduce new solutions. Yeah. And some questions on Steam. I think there has been no new questions on Twitter, so my feedback is that so far this is the best game ever.
Nice. Nice question.
Good question. Okay, more of these questions, please. Thank you very much. I gave a little heart here. Yeah, we're very happy to read messages like those. Just the other day someone posted on Twitter as well. Really, this stuff makes my day. I think I can speak for you as well in that way. It's just why we are in the game industry, to see people enjoy it. So thank you very much. We can skip this. It's not really a question. And this, I translated it, and it's a question about Russian language, if it's going to be added.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I assume this is an answer by our publisher, but we have localizations planned for the full release. We are still evaluating the final list of languages, but I'm fairly confident Russian will end up being in there. I think also German language is almost a given, that these two languages are definitely going to happen. Maybe more, but some form of localization will be expanded on with the full release of the game. There's already Czech language because I've been born in Czech. I know Czech language, so I try to translate it sometimes, or like I've committed to it, so I'm doing it. So we have support for multiple languages already. It's just a matter of translating it, which we want to do only for the full version, mainly because we keep updating those texts as we develop the game. It would be just wasting resources to do it earlier. So yeah, I think we went through all of them.
Twitter, no?
Twitter, I can check, but I think there's not. Oh, actually, it didn't update. But no. Yeah, we made it to the top 100 of IndieDB of the year. Thank you very much for voting, supporting us. It's been a huge surprise for us to get there. So thank you very much. I feel great about this. And amazing. Yeah. And so you can still vote for us to get it to the, I don't know if it's like top 1 or something. I know they have categories. Top 100, is it here? Yeah. So we are on the released games in Realistic Sim. You can see I already voted, and there's 3 other games we're stuck against. So all of them are great, but ours is of course better. So go and vote for us, so we win, and we get extra exposure, more eyes on the game. That in turn helps us to get more support for developing it and making all of these wonderful features we've been discussing even better. Yeah, please go vote for us, and let's hope we get the best position we can.
Yeah.
All right, that would be everything for today. Is there something in the chat? They don't. What about allowing them to show production after they amass like 1,000 pieces of plunk? They don't look nearly as cute. I guess this is about these games. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, our game is the cutest, the bestest, the most fun, interesting, and amazing. I think that's out of the question, really. So, yeah. With that said, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a wonderful 2 hours. A little bit exhausting, but very cool questions. So thank you for asking them. It's been a blast to answer them.
Thank you for sticking through all the technical difficulties we have.
Yeah, we try to improve for next time. Maybe do some tests beforehand on some other channel or something. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, and see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.